You think the ground keeps its secrets. It doesn't. Somewhere in the Siberian dark tonight, a river is chewing through a frozen bank, and something horrible is sliding out of it. A face, a paw, a mouthful of teeth that stopped biting 40,000 years ago. Death is supposed to leave bones. Clean, anonymous, forgotten. But permafrost doesn't do clean. It catches an animal mid-breath and hands it back with the fur still on, the blood still dark, the snarl still fixed. These bodies were never meant to be seen again. Today we're opening 6, and every one is wrong. Here's the part that should bother you. Preserving a whole moment, not a skeleton, but a body caught in the exact second it stopped living, takes a very specific kind of accident. The cold has to arrive fast, before the rot and the scavengers do. And then it has to hold for tens of thousands of years without ever letting go. Most animals that die don't get that. They get eaten, or they rot, and the ground gives back a few scattered, gnawed bones, and nothing else. But every so often, the permafrost catches one clean, freeze-dries it in the dark, and locks the whole thing, skin, fur, organs, the last expression on its face, in place. When that happens, you don't get a fossil, you get a witness. And almost every one of the 6 you're about to meet was pulled out of the ice by someone who was not looking for it, and was not remotely ready for what they'd found. So let's start with the one that ended up on a dinner plate. It's 1979, in the gold country outside Fairbanks, Alaska. A family of miners called the Romans are working their claim the usual way, blasting a wall of frozen silt with a high-pressure water hose to reach the gravel underneath. The mud sloughs away, and a shape appears in the bank that stops them cold. It's an animal, half emerged from the permafrost, and it is the wrong color. Its hide is stained a deep, metallic blue, as if it had been dipped in it. They call in scientists from the University of Alaska, and what comes out of the ground is a steppe bison, a heavy, humped grazer of the Ice Age plains, bigger than the bison alive today, roughly 36,000 years old. They name him Blue Babe, after the giant blue ox of the Paul Bunyan tales. The blue is a mineral, vivianite, iron phosphate, which crusted over his skin in a chemical reaction with the frozen earth, so the whole body glitters like tarnished metal. But the color isn't the disturbing part. When paleontologist Dale Guthrie examines the carcass, he reads the last minutes of this animal's life straight off its skin. There are claw marks raked across the rump. There are tooth punctures in the hide. This bison was killed by an American lion, a cat about a quarter larger than an African lion, one of the great predators of Beringia, the lost land that once joined Alaska to Siberia. Guthrie could even reconstruct the season. The animal still carried a thick layer of winter fat and dense underfur, so it died in the cold months, was pulled down from behind, partly eaten, and then frozen so hard and so fast that the lions never got to finish it. The kill and the burial were almost the same event. And here's where it gets strange. In 1984, while preserving the specimen, Guthrie's team cut a piece of flesh from Blue Babe's neck, stewed it with onions, carrots, and a generous amount of garlic, and ate it. Guthrie described an unmistakable beef aroma, mixed with a faint smell of the earth. Not, he admitted, entirely pleasant, but not rotten either. Everyone at the table had a bowl to toast the specimen, and by every account it went down without a single case of illness. Nobody got sick. A team of scientists sat down and ate an animal that had been killed by a lion before the first human cities existed, and lived to describe the taste. Blue Babe bled out onto the frozen ground 36,000 years ago. The next body still had liquid blood inside it. Move west, off the coast of Siberia, to a scrap of frozen island in the Laptev Sea called Maly Lyakhovsky. May 2013. A Russian team from Yakutsk is digging a mammoth carcass out of the permafrost, chipping away the ice that has held it for as long as our own species has existed. Beneath her belly, their picks break into hollow pockets in the frozen ground. And out of those pockets, dark, red-brown liquid wells up and starts to flow. It is blood. Flowing blood, running freely, in ground and air that sit well below freezing, at a temperature where nothing liquid should exist at all. The mammoth is female, an old cow who died in her 50s, and she is somewhere around 40,000 years old. They nickname her Buttercup. The find is treated as an event. A piece of her is flown to London, where a team runs what amounts to a mammoth autopsy on camera, cutting into flesh that has no business looking the way it does. When the blade opens her muscle, the tissue is dark red and, in the words of one biologist on the team, looks really juicy. Bright red where it is first cut, then slowly browning as the air reaches it. Exactly like meat from a butcher's counter rather than something dredged out of the Pleistocene. Her trunk is the best preserved mammoth trunk ever recovered. The blood likely stayed liquid because of natural antifreeze properties combined with the sealed, insulating pocket of ice beneath her, though that mechanism is still being worked out. What isn't in doubt is how she died, and it's grim. She had given birth to at least 8 calves in her life, and her body carried signs of illness, possibly gallstones. In the end, the evidence suggests she became mired, stuck fast in a bog or a collapse she couldn't climb out of, and was attacked from behind while she was trapped and helpless, before the cold finally closed over her. And now the truly modern part. Because her cells and her blood are this intact, Buttercup sits at the center of serious scientific conversations about pulling the woolly mammoth back into existence. Nothing of the kind has been done, and it may never be. But her body is the reason people stopped laughing at the idea. A mammoth that still bleeds is unsettling enough. The next animal kept its whole face, and the snarl that came with it. Stay in the same freezing archipelago and cross to the larger island, Bolshoi Lyhovsky. In 2020, reindeer herders picking their way across the thawing tundra find a body lying exposed in the mud. And it is not a mammoth, it is a bear. A whole bear, adult, with its fur, its teeth, its paws, and the detail that made scientists at the Northeastern Federal University go quiet when they heard about it, its nose still intact. This is a cave bear, Ursus spelaeus, a species that went extinct around 15,000 years ago. And until this moment, every cave bear anyone had ever studied was a pile of bones or a bare skull. This is the first and only complete cave bear carcass with soft tissue ever found, somewhere between 22 and 39,000 years old. And the rights to study it passed to the Northeastern Federal University in Yakutsk, the same institution that handles the region's mammoths. Think about what that means. Cave bears were enormous. Big males could rival the largest bears alive today, and they shared the same caves as Ice Age people, sometimes sheltering in the very same darkness, generation after generation. There are caves across Europe, with their floors stacked knee-deep in cave bear bones, thousands of individuals in a single site, and a long-running argument about whether early humans feared these animals, hunted them for their dens, or half-worshipped them. For all of that history, across all those bones, nobody had ever once looked a cave bear in the face. Now we can. The snout is there. The lips are there. That intact nose is the same nose that once pushed through the black air of a cave, testing the dark, breathing in the scent of the people huddled at the far end of it. The internal organs are still in place inside the body, waiting to be studied. Researchers can finally examine what a living cave bear actually was. Its last meal, its diseases, the sound-shaping soft tissue of its throat, instead of reconstructing it from a skeleton bolted to a mount. A complete adult predator, tens of thousands of years dead, thawing out of an Arctic island with its face still on. But at least the bear came out whole. The next animal came out as nothing but a head, and it was still snarling. Now to the Terektiak River, deep in Yakutia, in the summer of 2018. A local man named Pavel Efimov is walking a thawing riverbank, the kind of ground that gives up mammoth tusks if you know where to look, when he sees something lying in the mud that his brain refuses to file correctly. It's a head. A furred, fanged, unmistakably canine head, roughly the length of half a modern wolf's entire body, about 40 centimeters. And there is no animal attached to it. It has been separated cleanly at the neck, and it is snarling. Scientists date it to more than 40,000 years old. It belongs to an adult wolf, 2 to 4 years old, from an extinct Pleistocene population, and it is gigantic compared to the wolves alive now. The head alone is longer than many modern wolves' entire skulls. The preservation is almost unbearable to look at. The thick fur is still there, matted but present, right down to the guard hairs. The ears are up, the lips are pulled back off the fangs. The tongue is still in the mouth, and inside that skull, the brain is preserved. A real Ice Age wolf brain, its folds still readable after 40 millennia in the cold. Researchers from Russia teamed with the Swedish Museum of Natural History, home to some of the world's leading ancient dino scientists, and with specialists in Japan, scanning the head and sequencing what they could to place this animal on the wolf family tree and see how it relates to the wolves and dogs we know. But the question that truly hangs over the specimen is the simplest one, and it has no clean answer. Where is the rest of it? A head this size, this complete, severed at the neck and buried alone in the permafrost, with the body nowhere to be found and no obvious cut to explain the separation? We know the cold kept it. We do not know what took the head from the body, or why only the head survived to be found. A snarl, frozen mid-sound, with nothing behind it. The wolf's brain lasted 40,000 years. The next body kept a brain too, and around it, the marks of something worse than any predator. Back to the mainland coast of the Laptev Sea, near a place called Yukagir, and back to the year 2010. Tusk hunters working the frozen bluffs find a young woolly mammoth in the ground, strawberry blonde fur still clinging to her in patches, about 39,000 years old. She is a juvenile, only 6 to 9 years old, barely more than a child by mammoth standards, still small, still growing. They call her Yucca, and she is so complete that scientists can study not just her bones, but her skin, her trunk, her fur, and, once they scan her skull, what is left inside her head. She is one of the best preserved mammoths ever found, complete enough to go on public display in Moscow. And on a medical scan, she gives up something no other mammoth ever has: a brain. An actual, mostly intact woolly mammoth brain, the only one known to science, with the folds still visible, the blood vessels traceable, the cerebellum recognizable, even the tough outer membrane that once shielded it still wrapped in place. That alone would make her extraordinary. But then researchers read the rest of her body, and the story turns dark. There are healed scratches on her hide, a lion attack she survived earlier in life that her skin had time to close over. And there are fresh, deep gouges and a broken lower leg from the very end, the marks of cave lions running her down and pulling her, or nearly, to the ground. Then comes the detail that changes everything. A long, straight cut running down her back, and neat, patterned openings in the skin that don't match any animal's teeth or claws. They match tools. The leading interpretation is that human beings were there, that Ice Age hunters drove the lions off this dying young mammoth and took the carcass for themselves, 39,000 years ago, above the Arctic Circle. If that reading holds, and paleontologists still argue about it, then Yucca isn't just a mammoth with a preserved brain. She's a crime scene, a juvenile animal, ambushed by lions and finished by people, her hide opened with blades, her brain surviving whole to be scanned, tens of thousands of years later, by the same kind of hands that once cut into her. We were already in these stories, standing over the body. The last animal is one we had never once seen the face of, until it thawed. End on the Batyarika River, in Yakutia, with a body that came out of the permafrost in 2020 and was described to the world only in November 2024. At first, it is just a frozen lump of an animal, a small, mummified body that could be almost anything. Researchers lift out the head and upper half of a cub, 3 weeks old when it died, at least 35,000 years ago, with dark brown fur, stiff whiskers, soft rounded ears, and tiny curved claws still attached to the paws. And when they clean it and really look, they realize they are staring at something no living person has ever seen. It is a saber-toothed cat, Homotherium, the scimitar-toothed cat, a predator known until this exact specimen only from scattered bones and fangs pulled out of the dirt across 3 continents. Nobody had ever seen its skin, its coat, or its actual face. Now there is one on a table, and the researchers can lay it side by side with a 3-week-old modern lion cub for comparison, and it does not look like any cat that exists. The paws are unnervingly wide, built like snowshoes, and they lack the small pad a house cat or a lion carries on its wrist. The neck is far too thick and muscular for a kitten. The ears are small, the mouth is oversized, the forelimbs are long, and the coat is dark. Every feature of an animal engineered to walk, grip, and hunt across a frozen world rather than a warm one. It was 3 weeks old, and it was already shaped wrong for our planet. This is the world's first mummified saber-toothed cat, published in a scientific journal at the end of 2024, a creature we had reconstructed for more than a century purely from its teeth, suddenly handed back to us with a face and fur and claws. And it came out of the ground in 2020 and was only fully understood 4 years later, which tells you the ground is still working. It is still handing up animals we have never once laid eyes on. That's the part to sit with as you leave. Not one of these 6 was uncovered by an expedition that went looking for it. A hose full of water on a gold claim, reindeer herders crossing the tundra, tusk hunters cutting into a frozen bank for ivory, a man out walking a riverbank on an ordinary afternoon. Every one of these bodies was an accident, stumbled into by someone whose day was about to get very strange. And the accidents are speeding up. The permafrost that has been holding these animals is thawing now, faster than anyone can dig, slumping into mud every warm season and handing a little more of the ice age up into the daylight, a process that used to take the ground thousands of years, now happening in a single hot summer. Somewhere out there, right now, in the dark, under the frozen ground, there are more of them. A face, a paw, a mouth still open around a sound it made 40,000 years ago, a brain, a belly full of a last meal, a snarl waiting for the ice around it to soften. The only real question is which one comes out next, and who is going to be standing there, holding a hose or a shovel, when the ground decides to hand it over. If a body that should not still exist is your kind of nightmare, stay with us. There is always another one coming out of the ice.